Old Grognard says, let's learn how psionic power checks work in 2nd edition AD&D. In this video, we're going to look at how psionic power checks work, and as part of that, we're going to look at power scores, how the D20 roll works, how to interpret psionic power stat blocks, and then try to answer any questions that come to mind while making this video. What we're not going to cover in this video is how opposed rolls work and how psionic combat works. These things deserve their own video or videos, and I don't want to have us drinking from the fire hose. With that out of the way, let's start with power scores. Each psionic power has a power score that represents a character's ability to use that power. This is listed as part of the power's description. Power scores are tied to an ability score, usually plus or minus something. For example, if a power score is listed as Wisdom -3, the power score would be 3 less than whatever the character's wisdom is. Now that we know what power scores are and how they're figured, let's look at how to use them. The basic idea is that we roll a d20, and if we roll equal to or less than the power score, we succeed. If we roll higher than the power score, we fail. If we look at the results for 1, 20, and power score, they each have their own special results depending on which power we're using. 20 always fails, and there's an optional critical failure result that varies depending on which power we're attempting. This is listed in the power's description. A roll of 1 always succeeds, but only marginally so. This is true even if a character's power score is somehow reduced to 0 or less. Some powers have specific results for if you roll a 1 on a power check. These can all be summed up as, it works, but... Again, this is listed in the power's description, and not all powers have flawed results listed for rolling a 1. Rolling power score is a critical success. There's an optional effect for power score, like what we have with the 20, and again, this is listed in the power's description. Let's tie all this together with an example. We're going to use the psychokinetic devotion Create Sound. Basically what it does is allow the psionicist, or wild talent as appropriate, to create sound within 100 yards. The examples given are making rocks sing, weapons cast insults, or trees sound as if a battle is going on inside them. The sound can be as soft as a whisper or as loud as several people shouting in unison. It also can't have magical effects, so you could duplicate a banshee wail, but it wouldn't be able to harm anyone. If we look here, the power score for Create Sound is Intelligence -7. We're going to use a 16 intelligence for this example, so 16 minus 7 makes our power score 9. This is what the possible outcomes for our d20 roll would look like. If we roll a 20, it's not just regular failure, it's advanced failure, and a loud boom erupts near the character attempting to use the power. 19 through 10 is just regular everyday failure. In either case, the price of failure would be that we would lose PSPs equal to half the initial cost rounded up, which in this case would be 4 PSPs. If we roll a 1, the power works, but it doesn't sound quite right and may arouse suspicion in listeners. If we're trying to imitate a specific person's voice, this happens on a 1 or 2. When I'm the DM, I explain it as sounding like it's coming from a crappy speaker or a transistor radio with most things. Or with specific voices, it sounds like someone doing an impression of that person and not the actual person. 3 through 8, the power works normally, and on a 9, our power score, the sound can be as loud as a dragon's roar. With any of the successful rolls 1 through 9, we would at this point spend the full initial cost to activate the power, in this case 8 PSPs. Now that we've looked at power scores and how the d20 roll for power check works, let's look at how to read the stat block. Most of it is self-explanatory, but the preparation time might be confusing to some folks. When I first read this 30-some odd years ago, I thought it might be the Psionics equivalent of a speed factor or casting time, but it's not. Psionic powers all have an initiative modifier of 0, They just go off on your initiative. What the prep time is instead is how many rounds the character has to prepare before using the power. During this time, they can't initiate any other powers, but can maintain any that were previously activated. So, for example, if we use object reading, it has a prep time of 1 round. Since its range is touch, the DM might interpret this as the psionicist handling the object for a round, we'll call round 1, before doing their power check in round 2. If they fail their power check, they can try again in round 3 without having to redo the preparation. If that fails, they have to start over. If they prepared in round 1 and for some reason were not able to do the check in round 2, they could hold until round 3 and then try. But if that failed, they would have to start over. A question you might have at this point is, what if a power score is 20 or higher? And this isn't covered in the Psionics handbook, but they do mention it in the Dark Sun box set's rulebook on page 38. How they handle this is that a 20 is a regular failure, but you ignore the results for power score and rolling a 20. So again, it's just a regular failure. I've used a house rule for this where a 20 power score is adjusted to being a 19, with a roll of 20 just being regular failure that ignores the 20 result listed in the power description. A 21 or higher does the same thing, but if you roll a 20 you don't lose any PSPs. Again, this is a house rule and it probably won't come up unless you're playing Dark Sun anyway. Now it's time for page numbers, and while those are up, I'll take this time to do a quick shout out before we go to our outro. This shout out goes to Astral Marmot. I've been watching videos about how to DM with ADHD, anxiety, and other fun things of the sort, and her videos, for whatever reason, just resonated with me more than others. So, if that sounds interesting to you, please go take a look. And with that, it's outro time. Hypothetical eldritch being, who has psionic powers and isn't afraid to use them, and I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day.